I sometimes get asked is, hey, why'd you get a BMW? BMWs are a little more expensive to maintain, a little harder to kind of take care of. For some people, buying a car like this, or really a Mercedes or an Audi or any of the luxury brands, sometimes it's not so much about what the car is, but more about just being able to say you have one, or to say, in a way, to mark a milestone of, I've reached a certain position, this is what I want to get, more so to impress others than yourself. But the reason that I've always kind of had an affinity towards BMW, and not to say I do really like a lot of Audis, I like a lot of Mercedes, the reason kind of stems from a little bit of a story, which is that my dad had a friend that was a physician. He was a radiologist, and one of the things that he got when first time I met him, he was just finishing his training, and as physicians you have to complete residency and then you have to complete fellowship, so by the time you actually are an attending and making kind of the full salary, it takes some time. So I met him as he was finishing his training, and seeing him kind of really express how much he loved his work, but more than that, just seeing him get his life together. And one of the things he ended up getting as kind of his first luxury purchase was a BMW 545i. It was, I think, a 2004 model, the Bangle Butt era, but he had it in black. He had it with the M Sport pack, and it just looked amazing. And it was one of the nicest cars I had been in up to that point, and that's kind of what influenced me, that like, I got to become a physician, I want to do what I can, and this is something that I want, a car like this. I remember my uncle used to have a older 5 Series, and can't remember it too much other than the seats were very flat and you go sliding on the leather, so different experience there. But first real experience where I was like, I gotta try this, I gotta work hard, this is what I want. So that's where I was like, okay, I really want to get a BMW. Where I used to live, every time I would see a BMW, no matter what, it could be the most basic 325i, kind of got excited. So I've always had that kind of affinity. I was trying to convince my parents, like, hey, we could do this, and reasonably speaking, they were right in saying no, we shouldn't. So that was one of the dreams. So in between, obviously, on my channel, you see that I had my Honda Accord, and that's what I've been driving. And I have always loved cars, and there's again a lot of brands that I would love to have. There's different cars that I love, but as like an attainable thing to start with, something that I would enjoy driving, it was the BMW. I did have a chance, we looked at a 3 Series from the F80 era, I believe. This was before I got my Honda. We looked at used models, but relative to buying a used car at that time, for the features you got in that compared to what you could get in a new Honda Accord at the time, and the way it drove, legitimately the Honda drove really well. And the model I was looking at was a 328. Didn't really have a lot of options, just because this would be more expensive than what my budget would allow. So that's where I decided for the Honda. But once I was ready and I was willing to say that, I'm ready, I want to get get my BMW now, this is where I was looking to. So what I have is a G20 BMW 330i. Would I have loved to get the 340i? Absolutely. But if I'm thinking about just the way I'm driving, and I kind of went over this before, this is primarily going to be my commuter cars, my get to work and everything, and I wanted to be nice to drive on the occasion. So kind of just taking all of that into account, I was like, okay, as my first kind of bigger purchase that I want to have, I want something that kind of is going to be amazing to drive, but as well reasonable and not overdo it from the get-go. And that's where I decided on the 330 rather than the 340. As well, prices, like, I legitimately was probably stretching a little bit to make it fit into my budget. So that's where I ended. And I absolutely love this car for the way it drives. I am able to just, when the roads get twisty, I will admit that, like, when the roads are rough, it is not a fun time. This has the M Sport suspension, it has the run flat tires. So yes, the car is not the most comfortable to drive in those scenarios, and legitimately speaking, living in Chicago and being stuck in traffic a lot of the time on the interstates, it is just not fun. This car does not have the radar cruise control. I went over that. That was a feature that I thought I wouldn't need, but now that I have a legitimate commute, it's something that I really wish I had. So it's, again, I was stretching my budget to get this because I was at a point where I was like, I really want to get it. But every time I'm just sitting there doing work and I just decide I want to go for a drive, this car makes me feel so happy when I go out. There's a road or an area that I found that legitimately is fantastic to drive on. I apologize for the massive bumps along the way. And it is so exciting to drive in those areas. I'm not driving crazy fast, going normal speed limit speeds, but that's what I wanted, was a car that could do that at normal speeds. The dream is always something more. This was a car that, this is one achievement. I actually got it in black on black, just like the BMW that my parents' friend had. And I don't think I've ever told him this either, so if he watches YouTube, which he may, that was a little bit of an inspiration for me. But otherwise, just having a car that really makes you feel the movements, feel like you're in control, the feeling in the steering wheel, the acceleration, like, on balance, this is really a wonderful car. And I just love, when I go out just for a drive, this hits all the marks. So even though it may really hit the mark one day out of 7 during the week, when I get the chance to just drive for leisure, it's enough for me. And so that's kind of why I ended up with the 3 Series. And obviously, at some point, I've set milestone goals for myself. I do want to someday get a dedicated sports car. Until then, and having a car like this that can just kind of do all things. It's practical, has back seats, been able to take people in it. It gets great gas mileage, and for those occasions when I do find those perfect roads, it truly is a spectacular car to drive. So that's about it. Just trying something a little bit different for the intro, but truly, that's sometimes how I feel. I see my keys and I'm like, I think I have enough time to make it to the roads I like. Right now it's not. Right now I'm getting groceries. But even still, it's an occasion and I take this car to drive. So it's the Naptown Fizzle, and I will check back in another time. Peace.